We really are seeing the death of AM broadcast radio in the UK. TalkSport is seeking Ofcom's permission to switch off 4 transmitter sites, which would reduce the coverage of its AM national commercial radio licence from 93% of the UK adult population to 89.9%. TalkSport's broadcasts come from 22 AM transmitter sites, and this reduction in national medium wave infrastructure would leave 18 sites. TalkSport Limited holds a national commercial radio licence to broadcast its sport-orientated speech radio service across the UK on the AM medium wave band. Under its broadcasting licence, TalkSport must ensure that its service serves so much of the UK, as is for the time being reasonably practical. So this is where things are different compared to absolute radio switch off. 89.9% of the UK adult population is still reasonable, and I'm sure TalkSport have argued their reasoning on this to an adequate level. So much so that Ofcom have said they're minded to approve this request, but before reaching a final decision, they're giving stakeholders an opportunity to make comments on the request and their provisional decision. This is because, if the changes are permitted, some listeners will lose their ability to receive TalkSport on the AM medium wave band, and because other commercial radio stations might be interested in the approach that Ofcom are minded to take in this case. They said they'll carefully consider any comments from stakeholders before making a final decision. What's more of a shame is that TalkSport has requested to immediately close 4 of its sites before working towards closing a further remaining 13 sites when they become unviable over the next few years. So what does this mean? I'd hazard a guess that it's a purely economic approach. That will mean that 17 sites don't need power and maintenance, leaving just 5 left across the UK. It appears that the 4 sites due for immediate closure are Dumfries in Dumfries and Galloway, Kingston upon Hull in East Riding of Yorkshire, Fernborough in Bournemouth, and Greenside Scalp in Tayside. So let's look at some backstory here. The broadcasting licence was initially awarded by an auction process in July of 1994 and has subsequently been renewed on 3 occasions. The latest renewal process was completed in December 2021, when the broadcasting licence was renewed for a further 10-year period, until the 31st of December 2031. Since its eventual launch in 1994, TalkSport has incrementally increased the coverage of its national AM radio service to ultimately providing the service to 95% of the UK adult population through voluntary adding further transmitter sites, but in 2019, Ofcom approved a request from TalkSport to reduce its coverage back to 93%. On the 10th of October 2022, Ofcom received a formal submission from TalkSport proposing to switch off 17 AM transmitter sites, reducing TalkSport's national medium wave transmitter network to 5 core high-power sites. So this has been rumbling on in the background for a while. Ofcom said it doesn't have the power to give TalkSport permission to perform a rolling programme of transmitter site closures on dates to be decided by TalkSport, therefore they'll only consider TalkSport's proposals to close 4 transmitter sites immediately. The further 13 sites that TalkSport plans to close are Fareham in Hampshire, Stockton in County Durham, Lydd in Kent, Southwick Brighton in West Sussex, Dartford Tunnel in Kent, Clipston in Nottinghamshire, Duxhurst in Surrey, Wallasey in Merseyside, Lisnagarvey in County Antrim, Northern Ireland, Boston in Lincolnshire, Reckenton in Tyne and Wear, Postwick in Norwich, and Rusthall in Kent. TalkSport has made these proposals in the context of declining listening to its AM services, increased listening on alternative platforms, as well as the costs involved in maintaining AM transmitter sites in the context of high energy prices. The Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sports' Digital Radio and Audio Review in 2021 stated that industry should begin planning for the long-term retirement of analogue services. BBC, Wireless and Bauer, operators of national medium wave services, should develop a plan for the migration from AM services to take place at some point in the mid-2020s. Ofcom have said, in short, that they agree that it's no longer commercially viable for TalkSport to cover 93% of the population, and the alternatives the station provides are acceptable. They said, if we decide to accept TalkSport's proposals, we would vary its broadcasting licence and its associated Wireless Telegraphy Act licence by removing reference to the transmitter sites that TalkSport is proposing to close. So it appears that it's more or less a done deal, and I'm just glad to see that my local Moorside Edge is safe for now, which brings us round to Absolute Radio. In a previous video, we looked at their premature closure of their AM service, which was a breach of their licensing conditions. Well, Ofcom has come out with an update. They said that under section 111.4 of the Broadcasting Act 1990, if Ofcom is satisfied that the holder of a licence to provide a national service has ceased to provide the service before the end of the licence period, and it is appropriate to do so, it must revoke the licence. Well, we knew that bit was coming. It went on to say that under section 1013 of the Broadcasting Act 1990, where Ofcom revokes a national licence, it must require the licence holder to pay a financial penalty. We'll now undertake a further process to determine the level of the penalty. So, as expected, Bauer will at some point have to pay a financial penalty for ending their AM services early, so we'll just have to wait and see what that amounts to in the near future. As for the state of AM broadcasting in the UK, well, as I'm sure you're aware by now, things are only going to get worse.